Yes, it's on. Okay. I would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for February the 28th to order. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nations. First item is approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor? Carried. Delegations, that the committee receive the presentation of Beth Herford, Community Transportation Consultant at Urban Systems regarding active transportation background report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Yes, Courtney?
So thank you. I'd just like to introduce Beth Herford from Urban Systems. And Beth is going to go through the active transportation background report. She'll go into more detail, but I'll just briefly let you know that this was completed through grant funding and in preparation for the Transportation Master Plan. And also that we're planning to issue a press release this week to let the community know this is complete and thank them very much for their participation in the survey that was part of this project. So I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thank you, Courtney. Thanks for the introduction. Again, I'm Beth Herford, Transportation Planner with Urban Systems. Thank you to Mayor and Council and staff for inviting me to join the Committee of the Whole session this afternoon. That was a great overview, Courtney. Thank you. And we will provide, as I said, an overview of the background report. And Courtney already mentioned the the grant funding that was provided to complete this work, and I'll speak a little bit more about the process undertaken now. So the purpose of the background report really was to help the village in preparing for the upcoming Transportation Master Plan process that we understand is scheduled for 2022. As Courtney mentioned, the background report was funded through the UBCM Active Transportation Planning Grant, and that funding stream is specific to undertake activities leading up to a TMP process that would allow for detailed preparation and understanding related to active transportation within the Village of Cumberland. The funding could also be used for other communities that may be undergoing updates to an official community plan or other related policy. But the benefit of the fund really is to ensure that active transportation considerations make it into this larger planning process. So with that, this background report really does provide a foundation from which to build on in the Transportation Master Plan. We provide reference to active transportation conditions within the village, and as I said, this will be the foundation. I'll get more into how it would relate to a Transportation Master Plan process throughout these slides, and also there'll be opportunity for any questions afterwards. So the process that was undertaken included three main components. One was kind of a comprehensive policy review, and with this review, our focus was on active transportation references and any of the other benefits of active transportation, such as public health improvements, the environmental considerations. A lot of what we look at typically in phase one of a transportation master process is policies in relation to existing networks, planned networks, and making sure that those are well understood before launching into this process. So this work now has been done with a understanding and information available in one central location for the Transportation Master Plan team to pick up and move on with when planning for the network and other supporting policies that will come through that Transportation Master Plan process. We also undertook an active transportation facilities inventory. This was a field review, so we had team members out in the field with spatial equipment to record where your community's active transportation facilities currently are. This can be done in many ways and in different levels. So we've done a basic inventory here. Other ways that inventories can be done and maybe of interest following a transportation master plan process when we move towards implementation would be kind of a conditions assessment and just larger data set and data gathering. For this purpose, we did a basic set, which now provides the village with data demonstrating the presence of infrastructure throughout the community. This is something that hasn't been available before to staff and will be really valuable throughout the TMP process. We also completed a community-wide survey. Again, the funding was intended to support active transportation, and the focus of the community-wide survey was more so on active transportation, but we did explore all modes of transportation and received a really strong response rate. I'll provide an overview of the responses as well. So as far as the strategic priorities, I know you're all familiar here, but it was generally quite, I think, nice to be reading through the policies and seeing the level of support for active transportation and active lifestyles within the Village of Cumberland. So here we've included the vision, and it really is quite complimentary. So people of Cumberland are here because the village offers an unmatched quality of life. They envision that Cumberland will continue to be a community vibrating with activity. Surrounded by living forests, the village is a mecca for outdoor recreation with opportunities for anyone who wants to immerse themselves in nature. Protected by living natural corridors, the network of walking and cycling paths attracts visitors from all over the world. So this is really a great statement from which to work with through the Transportation Master Plan process, and really supports a multimodal network development and plan. For reference, I know some of the text on the screen might be difficult to read, so I've provided reference pages if you've got the reports in front of you. So the longest portion of this report would be the policy review in pages 5 through 32, but we've also provided an executive summary that identifies the policies that are most influential to future stages of the TMP in relation to active transportation. We completed a provincial, regional, and local policy review, of course, with the majority of the focus being on the Village of Cumberland's policies themselves. However, there have been some recent updates in the region and in the province supporting active transportation in general, as well as reference to emerging networks in the region. So those have also been reviewed. The policies, as I've mentioned, generally provide support and direction to further develop a multimodal transportation network within Cumberland. And again, a really great foundation for a more complete transportation master plan than the traditional, which sometimes might focus solely on roadways. We'll move towards the inventory of existing facilities, and my understanding is you've got some printed maps in front of you. If not, the reference pages 33 to 35 in the background report. So as I mentioned, we did a field inventory to digitize existing active transportation facilities and infrastructure within the village. The information has been used to create two maps that you'll see there, one that shows the extent of the community and the other that focuses on the many amenities available along Dunsmuir Avenue currently. We also, through that exercise, went through a process with staff to identify and more aim to have consistent definitions of active transportation facilities in order to make sure that the maps could be representative of what's in the field. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about facilities and what that means for Cumberland in the next slides. But there would be more work to be done in order to kind of standardize the different active transportation facilities. One thing that I should also mention when it comes to standardizing facility types is a resource that was also reviewed as part of this from the province, the British Columbia Active Transportation Design Guide, which has been a really valuable tool for communities. It was published in 2019 and has allowed for communities across the province to standardize their facility types. The data that we gathered through the inventory of existing facilities has been provided to CBRD and is now available to be used in many different ways by village staff. So here you can see a few examples of your community's existing cycling facilities. We can see on the left-hand side, we have what's been defined as a buffered bicycle lane. We've got a painted bike lane and multi-use pathway, an unpaved multi-use pathway. So these facilities look different in other communities, but as I mentioned previously, there is a large effort to standardize these, and also not only standardize their dimensions and their geometric characteristics, but also how they are applied and where to. So identifying the proper facility type per setting. We also are showing existing pedestrian facilities. So we can see a pedestrian crosswalk. The crosswalk that's shown there also has what we would refer to as elephant's feet, which would allow for a cyclist to cross in that location as well. We've got a fairly traditional sidewalk. You can see a larger width there and pedestrian connection. When it comes to sidewalk widths and widths for cycling facilities as well, as I said, with the standardization, there are new standards across the province, which might be included in a transportation master plan for consideration and for design guidelines if that's a direction the village wishes to pursue. And then we have the example of the map, which I understand is in front of you, but it does demonstrate the presence of several types of active transportation facilities, including laneways, which in your community offer much potential and some creative thinking in order to incorporate them into an overall active transportation network and strategy. Moving on to the community survey. This is a longer portion towards the end of the background report from pages 34 to 59, and open-ended long answer responses are provided in Appendix A. In November, a active transportation survey was launched. As I mentioned, we ended up asking questions about all modes of transportation to just ensure that we have kind of a larger breadth of understanding heading into the transportation master plan process. The survey was well responded. We received 448 responses over a 3-week period. I believe that the strong response rate might be indicative of a high level of interest for a larger TMP process, and the community is likely looking forward to further engagement. The top 3 priority outcomes as identified through the survey included improvements to road safety, environmental outcomes, and public health. Convenience was seen as the primary factor for the community's mode choice, indicating 40% mode share for people driving. I think when we come to mode share, our survey focused questions on understanding how people move, how far they go by each mode, how far they're interested in traveling by each mode. And these are really important because the data sets that we typically work with in regards to transportation patterns are generally available through census, but the census data is limited in that it demonstrates trips to work. So while there is a lot of information available demonstrating mode share for trips to work, you miss other trips that happen within your communities, just trips to school or to fulfill other essential needs. As far as the community survey, I've got just kind of one slide per mode, and there is more information. We did a basic analysis and summary of the responses we received. The data from the survey has been provided to the village, and it's likely that the Transportation Master Plan team will want to do a deeper dive into this data. So this is generally painting a picture, and we're providing the opportunity for further analysis to occur as part of the TMP process once that team has decided what their main focuses will be and how that data might help them better understand the perspectives of the community. Currently, we asked how safe people feel walking and cycling. We'll have an equivalent question on the next slide. Walking received an average score of 71. What I've done here is provided more opportunities here for discussion around improvements. When we asked about barriers for walking, more often in Cumberland, we saw consistency both for walking and cycling in a desire for more facilities to be built and provided. For walking specifically, ways resulting in an opportunity to build more facilities and increase road safety. We also saw the speed of motor traffic as a barrier, sometimes separating people from motor vehicle traffic. Through new active transportation infrastructure can help that, as does lowering the traveled speeds. which could be done through traffic calming and lower posted speeds, and something that would likely seems that would likely be explored further in a transportation master plan process. Similar to walking, in cycling, we saw a lack of bicycle routes as being a barrier. I also see other as the number 2 here. Other actually in this case is people who said they do not cycle or reported specific locations of concern and areas where roadway maintenance is seen to make cycling dangerous, mostly in relation to potholes. So here we see the same, general interest in more facilities, indicating interest in more facilities, and also, interestingly, speed of motor traffic here as well. We also asked respondents what type of cyclist they would identify as. This is not overly scientific, but is often indicative of the potential for cycling within a community. And I believe, based on the recreational nature of Cumberland, there are folks who are identifying themselves as bold and fearless and enthused and confident. Typically, these types of cyclists are confident riding on roadways shared with motor vehicle traffic. But there is a demographic here identified as interested but concerned. And this is where the potential is in creating larger numbers or improving a mode share for cycling in a community. Often we see interested but concerned being families that would like to travel by active modes but currently don't feel confident in doing so based on the facilities that are available to them. And this, again, might be something that is explored further through the GMP process, but we are seeing a lot of communities really striving to achieve standards both for walking and cycling facilities that are all ages and abilities to help encourage this particular group to get riding more often. I will say, based on the numbers we have of the confident cyclists, it's substantially higher than other communities that we've been working with. When we asked more basic questions around transit and driving, we see as far as barriers, it's just around transit frequency typically, or that the service doesn't go where people need to go. For more references on transit, page 49 to 51. When we asked the types of trips that people are driving or carpooling for, we see that the trips beyond the community are top here. I don't think that this is any surprise. A lot of members of your community are traveling beyond the community each day, but maybe confirmation here and some further analysis might be complete to understand who those people are and what other type of promotion could be made to encourage fewer trips. When we asked what the main challenges related to transportation mobility in the Village of Cumberland were, we saw both in the multiple choice responses and the open-ended responses a large desire for improved connectivity to destinations throughout the region. And that also ties to the number of trips we're seeing that are going beyond the region, beyond the community as well. And then secondly, we saw unsafe facilities for walking, both for sidewalks, crosswalks, etc., and then no surprise into cycling as well. As far as general sentiment towards how well the transportation system is working to support transportation choice and mobility choice, we see a general consensus around fair, with good and a few responses for excellent, but fair and good being more common responses. And we had an open-ended question in the survey as well that read, what are your bold ideas for the future of mobility and transportation within the Village of Cumberland? The key themes, again, emerging at top is regional connectivity, cycling facilities, parking improvements, public realm design, some traffic calming, and public transit, road conditions, and multi-use pathways. And now these are quite interesting and will of course need to be explored further, but they do raise what should be some considerations around trade-offs with cycling facilities, parking improvements, public realm design. Each of these considerations will likely have a trade-off, as only so much work can be done within existing road rights of way. And of course, with strategic investment being focused in the places that it needs to be in order to meet some of these needs. So as far as the next steps, I think that we can get into that in another discussion with yourselves and staff. But the backgrounder really is meant to provide a resource for the Transportation Master Plan team, once selected, to start building that Transportation Master Plan. The way we've structured this particular phase of work really is reflective of what might typically be found in a phase one of a Transportation Master Plan process. So theoretically, with this background, the project could launch and move along quite rapidly in the beginning phases. The process highlighted, as I mentioned, a general desire to provide multimodal transportation choices that create regional connectivity, improve safety, and enhance overall community cohesion. I think that's everything I've got as far as my side of the presentation, but I will put it out to the group for questions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Beth. That was very interesting. A lot of work compiling all this information from all the various reports. It was actually put it in context with the number of reports that we have done up to date. I'm sure it did help you in a lot of your decisions. So we'll start with the round table of questions. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks very much for that report. Yeah, moving forward, this is definitely going to be necessary to inform the actor's transportation plan. I don't really have any questions, just some comments. Reading just all the survey answers, there's definitely a huge call out to connect Courtenay and Cumberland with something other than the Parkway, which is very challenging, but I would imagine if we could find something like that, that it would be very well used and then built around. So I'd be really happy to see something like that in the future. Yeah, and just the background, the cycling plan being in 1995, and then the only thing happening for cycling was when we refinished Dunsmuir, which is 30 years later or something. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done when all that's been realized for so long. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of connecting these dots. We've got a lot of development coming up. So this master plan is really going to play a part in connecting our community or not. So yeah, moving forward, we really have to be up with our site adaptive planning and connectivity and all the good things that we want for the future of this community. So thanks a lot.
Councillor Sproul?
Yes, getting from A to B, Cumberland to Courtenay, without going on that. Oh, thank you. First practice in 2 months. Yeah. There are potentials for routes following the Parkway along into Courtenay. I just realised that much of that land on each side of the road is Cayette. And so there is a possibility there, I mean, when we come to doing that. The other thing that excites me is the old railway lines, and there are many of them. And you could easily get people all the way to Royston on the Wellington Colliery Railway. And a little work has been done, but it could be more of a thoroughfare. And then once you get down to the old Island Highway, then you can easily get into Courtenay. So, I mean, there's so many potentials on this, and I'm really happy to see all this. So thank you very much.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and thank you, Beth. This was really interesting and awesome report. I really like the walking stats. It shows that internal commutes within the village are very walkable, and so anything we can do to support those is great. And I'll just reiterate again the importance, as you did, of something off the connector to get people into Courtney, because I think that would improve our numbers greatly. I do have a question. You mentioned in the report that the survey was awesome. You got great response, but you did mention that there was a lack of response from the younger crowd, and I wonder if you have any tips on how to get them involved in this process. They are all future drivers and walkers and riders.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. Do I have tips? I do. I think that within the transportation master plan, the communication strategy could have a focus on engaging youth. It is a very challenging demographic. However, we have had some success in other projects in engaging directly with schools through classroom engagement. Often, if there is a particular subject matter being taught through curriculums such as climate change, air quality, road safety, public safety, sometimes during Environment Week or something along those lines, we've been able to take an opportunistic approach and engage straight through an educator or through a youth-led group within a school. That's of course dependent on the level of interest from the school. We've also done such things as community walkabouts, where a youth group might be engaged and join that. Sometimes those take form of a pedestrian audit. Sometimes they can be a more recreational ride and a bike tune-up workshop. It really is about being as creative as possible with engaging that group. You may still end up with a small handful of youth who are typically quite engaged in these processes as well. But I think that there's really no shortage of opportunities. It's more about how much time can be invested in engaging with that particular demographic. Another opportunity that I have seen, and admittedly, like this survey rate for Cumberland was really quite strong, but in communities where engagement is presenting more of a challenge to a transportation master plan process or equivalent process, we often will do and I know the school in Cumberland has already done a school travel plan process, but we will do something that builds upon an existing effort like that with the elementary school in order to engage with parents. And we have done literally homework assignments for classrooms to complete surveys with parents and get some of the younger perspectives. And I think that, you've already mentioned it is really important. The people who are entirely reliant on active transportation to travel independently throughout a community are often not heard in these processes. So that equity piece of your engagement plan in a transportation master plan really should be highlighted if possible, and often is very much dependent on the resources that are provided for the engagement process.
Awesome. So we do have an active travel group out of the parents association at the school, so we can make sure that we incorporate the work that they've done along with this work moving forward. I think there's something on the agenda later about that. So thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, this is really good. It was good to review all the all the studies that we've done and all the different aspects of transportation. Talking about the active travel planning for the school and us working toward making Egremont safer for the students. And so I know that's coming up, a plan for our sidewalk there and for some different parking, and we're in discussions with the school around that. So that's great. Also the age-friendly assessment. I think it's good that we can work toward having those flat trails and more benches, and those suggestions coming out of that study as well. And then, of course, the regional theme that kept coming out of a lot of the comments about connectivity to Courtney and Royston. And I was thinking about the different ways that we could be approaching that, and our work on the Bevan lands and the separated trail that we are trying to put out on Bevan Road, and the possible connectivity via that route. And then, of course, the other regional thing, which is the transit. And at the regional district, we'll be having a transit future plan coming up this year to discuss what we want to do with transit. And there's been a lot of sort of negative stuff happening with transit over COVID. There was a lot of loss of ridership and revenue. We've regained some of that back. Actually, we've regained more than most areas back. So there are, people that want to ride transit and rely on riding transit, and we want to provide a better system for them. So I'm glad that we got a lot of information on transit through this study from Cumberland specifically, and we can bring that into that conversation at the region. So thanks so much.
Yes, Councillor Brown?
Sorry, I forgot a question. Can I
Yes, go ahead.
have another one? Now I've lost it.
Well, she will be available,
come
I'm
back.
sure, if you have a question later on.
Okay. Oh, I remembered, sorry. There's a school zone on the map on the Egremont side, but there's no school zone identified on the opposite side on First. So I don't know if that's a Rob question or a you question.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. We were made aware of the school zone on the Egremont side, but that's not a data. It's actually just marked up on the map for reference, so it's easy for us to update that detail. So thank you for raising it.
Rob has a comment.
Yeah.
So the school doesn't actually abut First Street.
Well, because
That's why it's not a school zone. So the only actual school zone is on Egremont. It's all residential along First Street, and that's a provincial standard, right? Most municipalities follow that those rules as far as developing school zones. So that's why there's no school zone there.
Thank you for the clarification.
I remembered something else as well that I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
So one of the comments, which I've actually thought about it before, but is a suggestion that we have a trail encompass all of
loop, yeah.
Cumberland. And this is something that other communities have, like Fernie has this system where they have a trail just surrounding the whole town, and it's kind of like a spoke. You can walk in different areas, which is wonderful. If we wanted to look into something like that, what would be a good place to do that? Under a parks plan, or would it be the OCP, or how would we investigate something like that?
Great point and great question. Also a great example from Fernie. Thank you for that. That is something that could be investigated within a transportation master plan process. This is going to be the most up-to-date that you will be working with. So there's a possibility to explore that here. I think that there is always a blurry line between recreation facilities and active transportation facilities, particularly in a community that is so recreational in nature, such as Cumberland. But that's also an opportunity to build on the community character and really develop something that is quite unique and provides real value to the community that way. So if this is something that has emerged through engagement, and I think through the engagement you've seen, there is a desire for improving facilities and improving connection within the community and beyond the community, then potentially that is something that comes through future phases of engagement. So as I mentioned, the survey typically would take place in the first phase of a transportation master plan process. Not always, but it is quite typical. But it's not standalone. There's other engagement as well. You would typically have a public event or several public events, meetings with other contributing groups, neighboring jurisdictions, and other ideas, big ideas, such as that might emerge. So it really typically what we see comes through existing policy direction. So if there is an overarching policy that directs a surrounding pathway network, then that's a solid foundation to start from, but also through engagement. So that may be something that comes out as a trend in other engagement tasks related to the TMP. But I wouldn't say it doesn't fit here. I think it could fit within a transportation master plan process if that's something that you hear from the community and is supported by existing policy.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that, Beth, I was really pleased at the number of people that filled in the survey. And it was, it's important to everybody in the community, traffic. And so that's the number one issue. I get letters from residents with concerns. So thank you for helping us in that way. The other thing is there is an existing trail system from our park down to Royston that people are using on a regular basis to go down to the restaurant in Royston. And then they also have a route where they connect to the Millard Creek area and go to the air park, and they visit different places on that route. So there are people already doing it, and they feel very safe in what they're doing. So we can capitalize on that. I think we need to look at the land and keeping it safe from development, and that would certainly connect us in many ways. So thank you very much. Look forward for this moving forward, and the comments, the bold ideas was really interesting to read. There were some really amazing thoughts and comments. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon, and good luck with the next few steps to get the Transportation Master Plan process started. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Next, we go into the closed portion. If somebody will make that motion.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Carried.